In the spring of 2025, President Donald Trump stunned the world by imposing steep tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico, sending shockwaves through global markets and igniting fierce debate across the political spectrum. The announcement came suddenly, with little warning, and was met with confusion and alarm by both allies and adversaries. These tariffs targeted the very heart of the American auto industry, a sector that relies heavily on cross-border trade and integrated supply chains to keep costs down and factories running smoothly. The 25% tariffs on auto parts and vehicles were pitched as a bold move to protect American jobs and manufacturing, but the reality was far more complicated. Automakers were left scrambling to adapt, facing sudden uncertainty and mounting costs. Within days, Ford and Tesla announced plans to shift billions in investments north to Canada, seeking stability and access to critical components. Their decisions ignited Trump's public outrage and dominated headlines. The president accused these companies of betraying American workers, escalating a dramatic and very public standoff between the White House and two of the industry's biggest names. Tensions soared as protests erupted and business leaders voiced their concerns. Trump's America First tariffs clashed head-on with the global supply chains that modern automakers depend on, threatening to unravel decades of economic integration across North America. Ford and Tesla argued that the tariffs would cripple their ability to compete, drive up prices for American consumers, and ultimately hurt the very workers the policy was meant to protect. Their rapid expansion into Canada was a defensive move, a desperate bid to survive a trade war they never wanted, and to keep their businesses afloat in the face of political uncertainty. Now, the North American auto industry faces an unprecedented crisis, as its very foundations crack under the weight of political decisions and mounting economic pressure, leaving the future of thousands of workers and entire communities hanging in the balance. Tariffs are taxes placed on imported goods by governments, and they play a powerful role in shaping global trade. In the automotive world, tariffs can change the price of a car overnight, affecting everything from the cost of raw materials to the sticker price you see at the dealership. These taxes are designed to make foreign products more expensive, giving an edge to domestic manufacturers and encouraging consumers to buy locally made vehicles. But the impact goes far beyond just price tags. For example, Trump's 25% tariff on auto parts from Canada and Mexico instantly raised costs for U.S. car makers, who rely on a steady flow of affordable components from across the border. Modern cars are marvels of international cooperation, built from thousands of parts sourced from dozens of countries. This global supply chain was made possible by decades of free trade agreements like NAFTA and its successor, the USMCA. The sudden imposition of tariffs shattered this carefully balanced system, forcing automakers to either absorb higher costs or completely rethink and overhaul their supply chains, a process that can take years and millions of dollars. For consumers, these higher costs translate directly into higher car prices, making it harder for families to afford new vehicles or upgrades. As prices rise, car sales often fall, putting pressure on manufacturers and threatening the jobs of thousands of workers in the industry. Retaliation was swift. Canada and Mexico imposed their own tariffs, targeting American-made vehicles and escalating the trade conflict. Suddenly, a Tesla built in Texas costs 25% more in Canada, closing off a crucial export market and making American cars less competitive abroad. This tit-for-tat trade war squeezes profits for automakers who are already operating on thin margins in a fiercely competitive industry. The ripple effects threaten jobs across the industry, from factory workers to engineers and salespeople, and can even impact entire communities dependent on auto manufacturing. For automakers, tariffs aren't a shield. They're a sledgehammer to the supply chain, breaking apart years of careful planning and collaboration. The result? Widespread chaos for companies, workers, and consumers alike, as the entire industry scrambles to adapt to a new and uncertain reality. Canada and Mexico wasted no time hitting back. Within hours of the U.S. tariff announcement, both governments convened emergency meetings, determined to show they would not be pushed around. The mood was tense, but resolute. Retaliation was inevitable. Canada, under outgoing Prime Minister Trudeau, slapped 25% tariffs on American-made electric vehicles, directly targeting Tesla and Ford. The move sent shockwaves through the auto industry, as Canadian officials made it clear that these tariffs were just the beginning. American automakers suddenly faced a massive new cost barrier in one of their largest export markets. Ontario even canceled a major contract with SpaceX, showing the fallout extended beyond autos. The province's leaders argued that American companies could no longer be trusted partners, and hinted at further reviews of U.S. business deals. Mexico's new president, Claudia Sheinbaum, announced her own package of retaliatory measures, defending Mexico's vital role in the auto supply chain. Sheinbaum emphasized that Mexico would protect its workers and industries, and warned that any disruption would have consequences for the entire North American market. With 15% of Tesla Model Y parts coming from Mexico, the stakes were high. Mexican tariffs and new inspections threatened to choke off critical components, putting American production lines at risk of grinding to a halt. Instead of isolating foreign competitors, Trump's tariffs isolated American manufacturers. U.S. factories faced shortages, delays, and rising costs, as supply chains that once flowed freely across borders now hit roadblocks at every turn. Ford and Tesla found themselves squeezed from both sides, taxed at home and abroad. Executives scrambled to adapt, but the sudden policy shifts left them with few good options and mounting uncertainty. The North American free trade zone became a minefield overnight. What was once a seamless market for cars and parts now bristled with new tariffs, inspections, and political tension. Automakers now face a two-front economic battle, struggling to stay profitable. Workers worry about layoffs, investors watch stock prices tumble, and dealerships brace for fewer sales. The coordinated response from Canada and Mexico has left U.S. companies searching for a way out. Industry leaders are calling for urgent negotiations, but the damage is already being felt on both sides of the border. The trade war's crossfire is devastating for the industry, threatening jobs, profits, and the future of North American manufacturing. Ford and Tesla are built on global supply chains. A Ford F-150 might be assembled in Michigan, but its parts come from Mexico and Canada. Tesla's Model Y relies on Mexican components and Chinese raw materials. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and auto parts have sent costs soaring for both companies. Ford faces higher prices across its lineup. Tesla's EVs become even less affordable. Automakers must choose absorb the costs and lose profits, or raise prices and risk losing customers. Canada is a key export market. Tariffs there mean plummeting sales for American-made vehicles. Tesla, already struggling in Europe, can't afford to lose Canada too. The trade war attacks production costs at home and destroys sales abroad. Ford and Tesla are trapped in an economic vice, squeezed by politics and global realities. Their survival depends on open borders, and those borders are closing fast. Amid the trade war, Canada's zero-emission vehicle, ZEV mandate, offers Tesla a lifeline. By 2026, 20% of new vehicles sold in Canada must be zero-emission, with a credit system that rewards EV makers. Tesla, selling only electric cars, racks up surplus credits and sells them to legacy automakers struggling to meet the target. In early 2025, Tesla earned over $400 million from regulatory credits, much of it from Canada. The policy acts as a subsidy, fueling Tesla's growth while rivals pay the price. Trump is pressuring Canada's new prime minister to scrap the mandate, but for now, it's a huge advantage for Tesla. Building a factory in Canada could help Tesla dodge tariffs and boost its ZV credit windfall. Canada has become Tesla's haven, a rare bright spot in a hostile trade environment. The real victims of the trade war are American workers. The auto industry supports millions of jobs, from assembly lines to suppliers and local businesses. Tariffs raise production costs and shrink export markets, forcing automakers to cut shifts and slow production. Every lost job on the line ripples through communities, threatening livelihoods across the Midwest and South. Ford and Rivian, more exposed to tariffs and losing federal support, face mounting pressure. The Trump administration is also cutting subsidies for non-Tesla EVs and charging stations, tilting the playing field. Workers now face rising costs and vanishing support, a perfect storm of uncertainty. The promise was to protect jobs, but layoffs and plant closures loom large. The human cost of this trade war is becoming painfully clear. The 2025 trade war has pushed North America's auto industry to the brink. Trump's tariffs were meant to revive U.S. manufacturing, but instead, they've shattered supply chains and sparked fierce retaliation. Ford and Tesla's moves to Canada are survival tactics, not betrayals. Tesla, uniquely, stands to profit from Canada's ZEV mandate, even as it suffers from tariffs. The real casualties are American workers, facing layoffs and economic decline. The manufacturing heartland is at risk, and the promised renaissance is slipping away. As of September 2025, the standoff shows no sign of ending. Will the US double down or seek compromise? Will automakers keep fleeing? The outcome will shape American manufacturing and millions of lives for years to come. The world is watching as this high-stakes saga unfolds.